go ahead and get us started here. My name is Nick Kremp. I'm the conservation agent here in Leominster. Typically, we kick off the meetings and go through the items on the agenda in order, but we're waiting on one more commissioner to show up, so we're going to hold off on the hearings for a minute until he gets here. And we'll start with the certificates of compliance lower down, but then we'll get to the hearings as soon as he gets here. So again, my name is Nick Kremp, the conservation agent. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone, if you have any devices or cell phones on you, please put them on silent, and I'll take that advice myself, so we don't get any interruptions during the hearings or other business. And I guess I'll take attendance of the commissioners present for now. So Jim Chambers.
Here.
Ken Ridlin.
Present.
Mike Seekey.
Present.
And Richard Gullick.
Present.
Okay, and absent are our chair Chuck Raymond, Commissioners Stephanie Quinlan, and we are expecting Bob Seacard to arrive any minute now. So with all that, I will go ahead and kick it off to our vice chair, Richard Gullick.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening, everyone. I don't know if you mentioned this, that it is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 13th, 2023, for the record. And we are going to, first thing we normally like to do at the meetings is offer to anyone who's here, if you have any questions or thoughts or comments for the commission that's not related to an item on the agenda, we would address that first. And seeing none, we will move along. We're going to skip the two new hearings that some of you were here for, and the continued hearing also, and go on to certificate of compliance, 62 and 74 Sheldon Hill Drive, DEP file numbers 199-1132 and 199-1133. What do you have on that, Nick?
Alright, so that's on Sheldon Hill Drive, near the end of the cul-de-sac. These two houses are bumping up against wetlands, and the grade was such that they had to build a couple of one big curving retaining wall along the backyard of both of those houses. So CAW Landscaping was the company doing that. I've been in touch with them, and they've been the ones filing the requests for the certificate of compliance. They have had erosion controls in place. They have completed the wall. I've seeded it, and grass is now starting to come up. I inspected it a few days ago on Friday, I believe, at which time I observed the grass being established, and I told them that they could remove the erosion controls. They have since removed the erosion controls, so everything is finished and ready, and I would recommend that we vote to approve a complete certificate of compliance for both of these. It's one wall, but under two, it's kind of strange, under two different file numbers because of the two different parcels. But it's basically the same job, so there goes.
Just one big house lot.
It's two house lots, and then the wall is going between exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, they're both satisfactory.
We basically met all the requirements from the NOI.
Yep.
Questions, commissioners? No. Okay, then we'll take a motion from somebody to approve the certificate of compliance, issue the certificate of compliance as Nick described for this property. Anybody?
We should do it individually.
Fair enough. First, for 62 Sheldon Hill Drive, DEP file number 199-1132.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. C.
Okay.
Anyone else second?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll
Commissioner Chambers.
take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call. Ken Ridlin,
Yay.
Bob Seacard. I'll hold off on you because you weren't here. Richard Gullick.
Here, yes.
Okay.
I think I'm here.
So motion passes 4-0 with one abstaining because you weren't here.
I didn't know.
That's okay. All right.
Okay, from there, now we're gonna go back to the first new hearing and get moving on. with
And then with the second
74.
file number, we got to vote.
Thank you, sorry. While we're on the business. So a motion for 74 Sheldon Hill Drive to approve that certificate of compliance, DEP number 199-1133.
So moved.
Thank you. Jim? And the second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael.
And take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call. Ken Ridlin,
Yay.
and Richard Gullick.
Yes.
All right. 4-0, one abstaining, and the certificate of compliance are found complete.
I noticed that Commissioner Seacard is here. Bob is here.
And now, for the record, now present is Bob Seeker.
So the first new hearing for the night, pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Leominster Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on a notice of intent for the construction of a single-family house and associated site work in a wetland buffer zone and riverfront area of the Newsnack Brook. Address is on View Street, Lot 1, map and parcel number 123-14-1. The DEP file number has not been assigned yet. Do we have someone here to speak on that particular property? Please state your name and affiliation.
Leominster owner.
Okay, so do you wanna talk about before we move the rest of the notice of intent, you wanna talk at all about the
Yeah, so I can describe the history a little bit, some of the background.
enforcement question and
Yeah.
what's been planned?
So up to this point, several months ago, Mr. DeMassa contacted me and asked me to meet him out on site and discuss what the next steps would need to be for permitting, wetland permitting. He had previously spoken with my predecessor Angela Jabuski. So when I went and visited him on the site, I found that it had already been cleared of trees and some regrading had been done. And I, at that point, informed Mr. DeMassa that no work at all in the riverfront area, the buffer zone, should have taken place prior to NOI filing. Following that, Mr. DeMassa has been very compliant with our requests for a short-term stabilization plan for the site. Since, as I said, it was all stripped bare by the time I had come to see it, and we had also asked him to repair some of the erosion controls that had lined the site, and install some additional ones to the satisfaction of the commission. So, as a long-term stabilization plan, Mr. DeMassa agreed to file an NOI as soon as possible to finalize his plans for the site, which he has done for us today. So that brings us, and some of those issues that I had said, like, or there was activity without permitting that incurred violation notice, which I had sent to Mr. DeMassa, which he was responding to, and seeding the site with grass and putting some tailings out there to reduce erosion and so forth. So that brings us to today.
Thank you. Some of us looked at the site today. The grass that was seeded on the steep hillside looked pretty good. The hydro seeding, was that I was asked today, was that an annual or perennial mix, or do you know what type of grass mix that was?
I know it's Mass DOT spec. That I do know.
Okay.
Whatever that.
So you've got a notice of intent of something you want to do. What do you want to do? Tell us about it.
So I want to build the same thing I built up ahead, up above that lot. It's a duplex. It's gonna have more walls because of the height of it. Because of the wall that drops down so much. But pretty much the same as what I did up above.
Is
So-
that,
How close is it to our resource area, the river, to the first part of the? Nick, you want to describe some of that maybe?
yeah, sure. So this is
Can
the.
you bring up the map?
So the actual parcel is outlined right here, actually goes all the way down to this, I believe.
Yeah.
So it's this whole parcel, this is the area of disturbance that I had described at the beginning of the hearing. The erosion controls are marked by the dotted line here, with the highlighted portion being the, what is to be turned into lawn, I would imagine.
Yep.
And the proposed retaining wall in white right along here with the area of the duplex in orange here. And just to clarify for myself also, you said, so it's basically the dimensions and everything,
Same exact, yeah.
same as the existing house above there. Okay.
Can you show us the area where it's the steep hill that leads down toward the river?
So
And then
there's-
show the wetland area and then show the river or stream itself.
So, this is a proposed, as we've discussed in some other hearings, previous to this. This is a partial paper road, partially developed road. This is all dirt right now up to here. And on the far side of that dirt road, there's a pretty steep, hillside sloping down to the wetlands, which have been flagged and are delineated in pink here with the triangles. The 100-foot buffer, so the 100 feet extending out from the wetland line is here, which crosses, covers approximately 50% of the proposed house footprint here.
A 100-foot wetland.
Yeah, the 100-foot buffer, so 100 feet from the wetland line. And then Manusnak Brook flows in this direction through part of the parcel. So that also puts this job in the riverfront area for us, which extends 200 feet. You can see the 100-foot distance from the river in this first blue line, and then the 200-foot riparian zone as this blue line. So almost the entirety of the site, except for this small portion that's to be regraded, is outside of 100 feet from the riparian zone. And as I said before, the 100-foot buffer zone from the wetlands extends right through the center of the house footprint here.
Thank you. I'd like to note for the commissioners that the 100-foot line from the river has no legal meaning or anything under the Wetlands Protection Act. It's 200 feet from there, and then the 100-foot from the wetland boundary, and that's just a marker in case somebody's curious. Is that fairly put? You can
I would
change it, you know, say it differently if you
I would
want.
say more or less that is correct. Informally, there's referred to as like the inner riverfront area, the outer riverfront area, as divided by that 100-foot boundary there. But I believe, yeah, Mr.
Rich.
But yeah, Vice Chair Dr. Richard Gulick is correct in that in the Wetland Protection Act, it doesn't really differentiate between the inner and outer riverfront areas. It's just kind of like closer, farther away, but still in the jurisdictional area.
Mr. DeMassa also has additional erosion controls at the base of that hill.
Yeah.
That were originally put in there that have been repaired as well.
That's right here.
Questions from commissioners?
Do we have an actual NOI on this?
It's on the drive,
This is a drive.
but I know you've been having issues with your email, so here it is.
I didn't read all of it, but I read some of it. And the drawings.
Pass that down.
What's impermeable area is it?
How much impervious is proposed? That's what I'm getting to right now. So proposed alteration as it appears in the NOI of the riverfront area is total 9,500 square feet with it actually is differentiated in the NOIs and the orders, the inner and outer riverfront area. So the inner riverfront area, there's 400 square feet of alteration proposed, and the outer riverfront area, there's 9,100 square feet proposed. So as I said, reflecting that inner riverfront area is just that kind of small corner at the top of the area to be graded there. So that's about 400 square feet.
So just to summarize, just a corner with 100 feet from the river or the stream.
Yeah.
About 50% of the property is within the 100-foot wetland buffer line.
Yes.
And vast 90-something% is within the 200-foot from the river.
Mhm.
A fair summary?
Yep.
Okay. Questions, thoughts?
Well, I noticed that most of the property has already been disturbed there, right? It's already been,
It has.
Mm-hmm.
Grass was planted to help that.
yeah,
I noticed that what was written put some of that on previous folks and various other organizations, including the city, for having done that, as opposed to this owner. Don't know what difference that is for us, because it's this owner's responsibility now.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Not a lot of room for the house, but it, I think, the retaining wall will help too.
Not our problem.
What?
That's not our problem.
Any other
No.
thoughts?
No,
No, I think,
no.
not bad, Bob, so.
No, I'm just saying that, it looks quite well, and, Carl has done a very good job of, preserving it now.
And responding to us.
Uh,
I think an important consideration is that there's no septic system there. It's town sewer, town water, less disturbance from that perspective, which I think is really important when we start talking about these things.
Is anybody else concerned in relation to, I'll put it this way, I am somewhat concerned with how close it is within these buffer zones. Especially within, it's all within the river zone, and half within the wetland zone. Doesn't have made up my mind on anything related to that.
The only question I had was, we talked about terracing the property from the edge, rather than to put in just a big wall. Have you given that any consideration? Are you gonna wall it, are you gonna terrace it?
I'd like to terrace it instead of, that one wall is 17 feet.
Yeah.
I'd rather cut that in half,
Yeah.
twice, make it smaller.
Yeah, because if you terrace it, what it does is any flow from the property, by terracing it, it's gonna decrease the velocity of that flow going into the river, and subsequently present less problems in terms of erosion and pollution to the wetland area.
I
So
agree.
that's,
Yeah, I didn't like the 17-foot wall, but he put it on, I guess, I said, okay, you already put it in,
Yeah.
we'll deal with that later, we'll make changes we can.
And if you do terracing, it pushes the edge of that property back and further up the hill from what you've shown here.
Yeah,
What we can
that's
tell
my
when
idea.
we're there today is that wall goes right to the edge of that steep slope.
Yeah.
That was,
there's not a lot of room for terracing, but any terracing will be better than none.
Oh, yeah,
Don't have to be
totally.
wide.
Pardon?
Don't have to be wide.
No,
Couple of feet.
Right, just enough to break it up and have.
Break it up,
Yeah,
drop off,
Absolutely.
start to absorb.
Jim?
I have a question about the city, View Street. Is it going to be constructed and accepted? Is it your responsibility? Whose responsibility for the storm drainage system?
I don't have to do the damn thing. It's already accepted, but I'm willing to do whatever I gotta do, because like I said, I'm in the business.
No, well, all right, but I'm new on the commission,
Yeah.
5.
No, goes back to 49 when they accepted the whole thing. 1949, they accepted the road.
Yeah, I understand,
It was a dirt road.
paper roads, we had,
Yeah.
my father owns a real estate.
It's stupidly accepted, and I said, I'll bring it up to improvements. I will do whatever you want me to do.
I mean, basically, he can just leave it the way it is.
Yeah, that's
He has no responsibility to deal with the road at all. He can leave it exactly the way it is, but he's gonna finish it.
Well, it makes sense. I
It's an
mean,
accepted, it
Yeah.
is an accepted street.
It's already accepted, so I mean,
Yeah.
it was a new development and the new developer was asking for acceptance on that street.
Right,
He
it's
would,
already
he would be responsible for,
Correct.
the catch basins.
Right.
Yeah.
The acceptance is as old as I am, I think.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, more thoughts?
All set, thank you.
Jim, any other thoughts?
Well, I think, in the general area, as we were there today, there are houses that are much closer to the riverfront area that have been existing and they don't seem to have caused too much of a problem. And, Mr. Demas is pretty adept at construction and I think given that our experience with him and responding to him, I think, he's taking it very, very seriously and I think he's doing a really good job. Other than that, that's what I have to say. I think the terracing can help.
Yeah, I'm still wondering how the erosion control on that hillside will hold up. There are sheets, so to speak, even with the grass there. If that was an
nothing's washed out though since we grassed it.
It isn't washed out, but
Yeah.
there are gullies there and it's possible for a lot.
And we've had some pretty
change.
heavy rain.
It would be nice to see how that holds up, but I'm not saying we would hold anything up for that. I am curious as to whether that's perennial grass and it's gonna be there next year, or is it just a quick growth?
But at this point, I don't think it
know
matters if he's gonna terrace it, he's gonna tear all it out anyway. Right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, he's talking putting in a wall, but then there's still the rest of that
So
slope
we can,
going
if
down.
we can take the curse off that hill and stop, put a wall down there, step it up and step it up.
Right. That might help things some. We do not have a DEP file number yet for this,
No.
So we have time.
so we'll have a little extra time to think about it, if that's okay, and not voting on anything tonight.
So we can't prove it anyway.
We technically could, but we typically don't.
Right.
Not best practice in case DEP issues some crucial comment that, you know, we oversaw.
Yeah, well, I'm sometimes pushed to vote when it's a very non-controversial, no question case.
Right, but
This that close out.
at this point, can you continue to work on the site?
No.
He has to wait for the approval.
No, I got nothing to.
No, he can't
I'm
work
good
on
with
it.
what's there now.
It's
I
not
have
a matter
nothing to
that
do
he can continue, give me a sec, please.
Yeah.
It's not a matter that he can continue, he is not allowed to have done any work in the first place, is what the law says. So there is no continuing going on,
Yeah.
if there wasn't to be any work, other than what we've asked for the erosion control. But so far, it seems like some commissioners do like your plans.
I
So,
like them.
okay, so we're gonna,
One more
yes,
question.
please.
So seeing as you're considering terracing and that other stuff, and you've got a little time before, should we ask for another notice of intent with the modifications, so we don't have to do this again?
I was gonna say, I would suggest, if your ultimate goal really is to terrace this, that you present us with a plan for that before we approve anything, because you're gonna have to come back for a modification anyway, before we close it. Like, if you build this and go the whole way and end up terracing it, and this is the only plan that we have on site, then we need to be like, we need to have that in the NOI for the final.
If you're gonna change it, do it now, not after we approve it. That's what we're looking for. You've been asked by a couple commissioners to terrace it. I've shown you hesitation in general. So you can decide whether to do that or not, but we'd like to see it on the plan before we vote.
Well, I was just saying, if it was gonna happen,
If it is,
if it was gonna happen, it'd probably be better if we did it all at once and then didn't have to come back for a modification or something.
Yeah.
Save everybody some time.
any other commissioners wanna comment on the terracing concept?
Do I have to wait another couple of weeks?
You have to wait anyways, cause we don't have the DEP
Right, I
file.
understand that, but if I change that now, do we have to start all over again?
Have to
So-
refile.
So you would have to come back with a modification. You wouldn't have to necessarily come back with a brand new filing, it would be a modification to this filing.
Yeah.
So would it be better if I just waited and get an okay first?
No,
What if you say no? And I
And
just
so the-
went through all that bother of doing changes.
well, that's the. So go
Is that
ahead.
gonna help me?
So the other,
Sir,
the other
please
thing
speak.
I was gonna say is that especially if you're planning on doing terracing anyway, and as Commissioner Ridlin had pointed out, you know, that's gonna be better for erosion and all of those concerns anyhow. If other commissioners have a particular problem with the way that you set up this wall, they might be opposed to approving the order because of the way the wall is. So if you're planning on terracing it anyway, it would be more helpful for you to present a plan showing that.
If you think it's a better idea, I mean, you're the,
I
obviously,
like
the expert.
the idea of terracing it.
Yeah.
That's what I suggested. I know it'd be more palatable to me. Commissioner Ridlin's already suggested it. I was getting warm feelings for the terracing idea, more so than what's
Yeah.
proposed right there
Yeah.
that close.
Put grapevines on it, like they do in Tuscany.
So if you get something to Nick, then you just revise this one, modify this, but you don't have to get a new DEP. It's still under the same first DEP file number
Yeah.
and so on.
You don't need to file anything new, just send me an updated plan
Right.
reflecting the terracing or however.
Okay,
Whatever you come up with.
I got it.
And you,
Okay.
and you don't necessarily need to do that by the next 2 weeks, like we would just, as soon as you can, I would suggest, but like for your own sake. But just whenever you get that done, whether it be in 2 weeks, 4 weeks, so just get it back to me and then we'll continue with this hearing with the new plans.
Okay,
So I'm gonna ask for a motion to continue your hearing until the next meeting. We'll have it scheduled for that. If you're not ready by then, that's fine also.
So I can bring it in then, or give it to him
Give
as
it to
soon
him
as
in
I have it
advance
done?
so we can see it in advance. I might
Yeah.
wanna go out to the
Okay.
site and look and
Yeah.
pace it and see where this terracing goes.
Yeah.
Same with some of the group that was there today.
Okay.
So with that in mind, last comments from commissioners? We'll move along and I'll ask for a motion to continue this particular hearing until our next meeting, 2 weeks from today, which is the
June.
27th.
So made.
Thank you, Commissioner Rizzo. Any second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Commissioner Seacard seconded.
Okay, so Pam one, Bob two. Take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call. Jim Chambers,
Aye.
Mike Seeki,
Aye.
and Richard Gulick.
Aye.
All right, 5-0, motion, or, hearing will be continued.
Thank you, sir.
Cool, thank you guys.
Carl.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you.
So our next hearing, pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Leominster Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on an amendment to an existing order of conditions for a single-family house with a patio and above-ground pool and associated site work in the wetland buffer zone and riverfront area of New Stock Road, address 27 Cherry Street, map of parcel 125-9 DEP file number 199-1102. And who is here to speak on behalf of this?
You have Christopher Anderson with Handy Engineering.
Excellent. So, and also in the audience, we have, if you would,
Brian LeBlanc,
right?
my wife Laura, and Emma and Ava.
Hello, everyone, welcome. Go ahead, Chris.
Again, just with Chris Anderson with Handy Engineering. Here on behalf of Brian LeBlanc for a amendment to an existing order of conditions. So I'll give a brief recap of what the project was that was originally approved, as I don't think any of these commission members were present at that time.
I might have had Chuck on the commission, but I think he's the only.
He was right around. So, this project was originally approved back in 2019. It went through the appeal, or the process with COVID, so there is an extension of 462 days, so the permit is still technically active up until March of 2024. But as part of the original project, it was the intent to construct a new house on the property in a location generally within the original house that was already on the property. This property predates the Wetland Protection Act. We chased deed back to 1949, so well earlier than any of the regulations were in place. So this property is subject to relief from the Riverfront Act itself. The resource areas are limited to the Manustock Brook, which flows off Locust to the west of the property. And in addition to that, there's also a bordering vegetated wetland that is located just off the property line that runs along with the stream itself. And there is a bordering land subject to flooding that's located within this area as well. So historically, the property did contain a single-family home with the yard and all that other accessories that are associated with that kind of use. Back in 2019, we came before the board or the commission to demo the existing house and rebuild it in place with the proposed patio and deck system on the back portion of the site.
So it was full demo, no.
Full demo, clean slate, so it was effectively new construction. At that time, the commission approved the alteration of about 1,850 square feet of riverfront alteration, which was effectively new construction that was not located within the original limits of work of the old house. So that's,
Can you point that out?
so the original house used to be located right in this location. And when we came through, we put the main body of the house in that same location, put a garage on the side of it with new driveway and a patio in the back. So all the new alteration that was performed equated to about 1,850 square feet of alteration. At this time, the construction of the house and pretty much all the site grading and utility work has been completed at this point in time. And based on the as-built of the existing house, it seems to be everything has been built to plan. So at this point, it's the intent of the applicant to modify the patio and deck configuration on the building itself. So it's the intent to put the patio in the same general location as it originally was, with some modifications to layout and configuration. There's still going to be a proposed deck in the inside corner of the proposed house, or the existing house. But with that being said, there will be an extension of the deck off of that that will also provide access to an above-ground pool located on the property. In addition to that, some retaining walls, as well as a fenced-in area on the side of the house itself. That being said, the overall alteration of the riverfront area does increase up to approximately 4,200 some change square feet, so it does increase. But as this property was in existence prior to the Riverfront Act, the commission is allowed to approve the alteration of 5,000 square feet, or 10% of the riverfront area, whichever is more. In this instance, we don't generate enough riverfront area on the property itself, so we do automatically get bumped up to the 5,000 square feet. So that would be the direct alteration associated with the construction of the proposed deck, the pool, and retaining wall systems itself. Some of the other criteria relative to the riverfront area that's associated with this allowance is maintaining the 100-foot riverfront area. So there is some criteria relative to the 100-foot riverfront area that we have to maintain. But as you can see, the 100-foot riverfront is effectively off locus, so that area is being maintained to ensure that the stream itself does not become negatively impacted.
What criteria were you referring to, Chris? You said criteria, what criteria?
So the criteria of this portion of the regulation is that you have to meet certain criteria for the protection of the riverfront area itself.
What criteria? That's what I'm asking.
So
Okay, you gotta be
that will
patient,
be,
sorry.
so that includes the alteration of the area, not altering within 100 feet of the river itself to maintain that natural vegetation. Stormwater management regulations as they are applicable to the site, and general construction ability and preventing erosion into the riverfront itself.
Okay.
So the 100-foot riverfront is going to be maintained as part of this. This site is a single-family home, so by default it does become exempt from stormwater management, and it was predating the construction or the institution of the local stormwater ordinance as well. So we're exempt from that. That being said, it's a single-family home, so there's really not a lot of relief on the property in order to construct the stormwater system itself. With that being said, once everything is said and done, the area will be loaned and seeded for permanent stabilization, and we're proposing to maintain the existing erosion control line that's currently on site, as it's pretty much established, and we will not be performing any work beyond that area. That being said, that's the general gist of the project. If there's any questions from the commission, I'll.
So thank you, Chris. And we get started first. Would you like to add anything to this as the owners?
I think I'm good.
I didn't understand half of what you said.
You get used
I
to it.
think it sounds great though.
Yeah.
That's an impressive thing. I like
Okay.
it. I say let
Nick,
it
there were a couple comments that were made that
Yeah, would
I
you
raised my eyebrows at, would you?
clarify what you were saying about, because the lot was
Predated.
was laid out before the Riverfront Act, so it's exempt from the
Before the Wetlands
Act?
Protection Act, and then you said Riverfront Act, you referred to two different things.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily exempt, but it's allowed a lot of allowances that normal
Okay.
projects wouldn't be subject to.
Not exempt then.
So
That
if we were to come in today and say, well, we have all this land here, we're gonna chop it up into 3 lots, this lot would be under full control of the riverfront area, and the commission could act in that fashion and require a lot of the riverfront requirements that you typically do on this project. As this lot was in existence before, it's August 7th, 1996, if I remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's allowed a lot of relief from those requirements, as long as we maintain certain criteria such as maintaining the 100-foot riverfront area.
Is that the property was just, outlined or border, the borders defined, or a matter of the fact that it was developed or not? This was not developed.
It was developed prior to this, so this
The house is a year old.
But it was, they
It
tore
was
up.
an existing,
Okay, so you told them down to do it.
just a
And that
small-
house has been
small
existing. Since when was that house?
So we chased the deed back to 1949.
Okay. But with a new house, I would, well, one, the exempt was not the right word, because that's what I got confused at.
It would
There would be,
it would be exempt, so even if this lot was not developed prior to 1996, it would still be exempt from the regulation or allowed the relief.
a lot of relief that's different than exempt, yeah.
So it's exempt from certain
Thanks.
criteria, but it's allowed.
Were there any others that you wanted to question?
Yeah, what was the second one, I remember there was the Riverfront Protection Act, and then there was a second thing that you kind of like turned around. Do you
And
recall
you
what that was?
too, when it was related to the feet distances or no? Maybe not, we'll come back.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Siki, you're the first to raise your hand.
Wow. So basically, most of the construction is done. We're here now to look at the addition of a wood frame deck and the addition of the pool. And there's still some of the, looks like there might be some concrete or some stone decking that's gonna go on the back of the house or not?
Correct, so that there is some stone base prep for a patio itself.
Yep.
That was originally approved.
Okay.
As part of the original order conditions.
Because what we are simply, is what, I guess, Mike, part of what you're saying is we're just looking at this change.
Yeah.
This is a pre-approved, notice of
So-
intent.
Right.
Is the pool and the deck the only change? Is the patio,
Addition.
been expanded or?
Right.
Patio will expand slightly beyond its limits by about 10 feet.
Okay, could you just describe I'm sorry, I wasn't able to make the visit this morning, but could you just describe to me the construction of that patio?
There would be a paver patio system, so
So water can infiltrate it,
there will be breaks within the
not
patio.
sealed bricks and water.
Correct.
So, yeah, I got drainage, I got sets of drain out, you guys remember seeing that this morning?
Yeah.
I did a
He
drainage.
works on
corners.
his drainage. We saw some of that.
Yeah.
Or it gets wet inside,
Yeah.
you said.
You know, deal with that in my house.
Yes, we are aware.
So I did a couple of questions. So one, is it a saltwater pool or a,
We're gonna do well, we got thinking about salt, but we'll go any way you guys want.
I don't think that's our decision. I think, we can talk about that later.
He's curious, that's all.
Yeah, we're
We
gonna
prefer
do
salt
salt,
water.
we're gonna do salt,
Really, so
just ease around the skin and stuff.
Well, I have a question of Nick,
Yes.
Is there an issue with backwashing when it's a saltwater?
So that's what we've been curious about. Yeah, what is your like maintenance plan for the pool going forward? Because I know that for chlorinated pools anyway, there's back flushing that Mike might know a little bit more about this, but you need to flush out some of the water periodically
Clean up the filter,
every
and I
week or
think
so.
you have to do pretty much the same thing with the saltwater filter too. Filters have to be cleaned and backwashed. There's a certain amount of discharge that comes from there. I think that would be my only concern is where is that discharge gonna go? How can we contain it? We did some background work. If it's chlorine and it's fresh water, the chlorine dissipates much more quickly. Salt is considered more of a pollutant. We're kind of looking for options to go into the stormwater system or even into the city sewer system where it would be treated because you're in the riverfront area, because you're in the wetlands area. It doesn't seem like, I don't think you have sewer down there, do you? Have city sewer down
Yes,
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
sewer.
Yeah.
there?
I
So,
wonder if the maintenance of a saltwater pool in terms of backwashing the filter is any worse than the runoff that you get from salting the roads in the
it
winter.
is not, it is not.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So, and this is, I think, more of a tangent than anything. I don't
Yes,
think
it
this
is.
has any bearing on any ruling that we would have necessarily. Because even if, say, you can't just dump chlorinated or salt water into like the brook or anything regularly, so that would be a separate
Right.
issue from us. You can maintain your pool however correctly, but that would be like a separate issue down the line if we came back and saw, oh, like, they're dumping salt water in the brook or whatever, so.
But anytime you're
Just
backwashing,
curious.
you are in such a sensitive area, anytime you're backwashing, your plants are gonna be affected probably more by salt than chlorine. But to be able to contain that somehow, a riprap area or something, just to keep it from flowing down into the resource would be something I think we'd like to.
So if I'm not
consider.
mistaken, we were approved for an in-ground pool, when it's all, was all done, we were approved for the deck, and an in-ground pool
Oh,
just off
really?
that deck, I believe.
That wasn't, I don't believe that was,
That's not the case? No. I thought that was the case, okay, I'm mistaken then.
in our past, usually, when it comes to, pool discharges and stuff like that, the main intent is not to pretty much take the hose and go right into the wetland.
Right.
So I think during construction of the pool itself, a small little well, just to help.
Some, well, you don't want the kids to fall in riprap or anything, but, you know, something that
Yeah, a
Kinda
slight
collects the
depre-
water.
Slight depression to slow it down,
Yeah.
relative to the chlorine versus salt conversation. Neither is great for the world, when it comes to plant life and wetlands themselves, so, I know there's been a bigger push towards salt water because it's a little bit more,
friendly,
I don't wanna say friendly, but,
not to the environment, but.
not to the environment, but it
To
does
people.
have some minor benefit.
I'm glad you said that was specific to plants and so on about the chlorine, because otherwise it's about the best chemical on planet Earth for water disinfection.
It is.
It's hugely important. So it's, other questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple, I went by it last night on one of my walks, to look at the site, looks good. How much more vegetation will be removed by this modification?
None.
None, I didn't think so, okay. And this, should we be a 100-foot,
So you have the 100-foot river front,
which comes down?
which comes through here,
Okay, that's what I thought.
and kind of hugs through the property before bouncing back out and clipping through the front. And the 100-foot buffer zone for the actual physical bordering vegetated is right through here.
Goes right through the house, about 50%, like the other case we discussed in that. How about the 200-foot line, please?
The 200-foot is located right through here, which encompasses, about half the building.
Oh, because you've only colored
Yeah,
what's
so the red is what was originally approved, the blue is what will be.
within the 200 feet,
Yes.
because you didn't color the rest of the building.
Chris? Is the earthwork that was done in 1949, does that change? I mean, I'm sorry, I asked that right, but is the contours relatively the same? Are we dealing, when you say that we're same property as 1949, is it the same property?
So I can't speak to what it would look like in 1949, but when we did the actual new construction, there was some additional grading that was performed in order to facilitate the actual foundation as well as the driveway. So there was some modification that was done as part of the original order conditions, and that work has been completed at this point in time. So now it's more or less micro grading in order to facilitate the construction of the deck and the patio and stuff.
Yeah, it looked
And
like.
the reason I asked that
pretty well
question was
established.
just to make sure that the exclusion that they talk about for the older properties applies to property that has been significantly altered.
But that's already been approved.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
already
that would
been
be a
approved.
separate.
You know, it's water over the dam.
Yeah, and it's done.
Yeah,
I
again,
just had one more question, just satisfy my curiosity. I see you got the shared roofing on it.
Yeah.
And imagine this is a residence, this is not a place of business.
No,
And no material will be stored on site.
no, it's a good question. No, we have a warehouse, so.
okay. Okay, and guess that's it for the commissioners. Is there anybody from the audience who would like to address this from the public? Your thoughts, comments?
Backyard.
This is your chance, ladies,
Yeah.
if you'd like to throw in your 2 cents toward this commission before we take the vote. Just a backyard.
Have a backyard.
No pony for that backyard?
They've been a lot of dirt for a lot of years.
Yeah.
This has been a long project.
Long project.
Your backyard, they wanna do some cannonball.
That's right. I think you wanna hold out for a water slide from that deck going right down in.
Yeah, there you go, that's
I'm
good.
sorry, that's frowned upon in the wetlands.
Right from the door, just forget the
That's
stairs.
what I was saying, right
Put a
from the
slide.
Thank you all. Seeing we have no further comments, Nick, do you have a recommendation?
So yeah, based on the presentation today and the site visit that many of you were at today, I would recommend that we approve the amendment as presented.
Okay,
I will make that
I will
motion.
take a motion
I will
to
make
that
that motion.
effect.
I agree.
Motion
100%.
by Mike, seconded by Jim.
Okay. So, Mike, to Jim, take the rest of the commission vote by roll call. Ken Ridlin,
Yay.
and Bob Seacard,
Yes.
and Richard Gullick.
Yes,
So that's 5-0.
that it is.
Yeah.
So that notice of intent has, or an order of conditions is passed with our standard.
The amendment is, yeah.
The amendment has passed. And it looks like you ladies will have your pool. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready, girl? Thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you, John.
thanks for coming, good, so good seeing you.
Don't forget to let us know when the opening party is for your pool.
Have a good night, thank you.
Get that on TV,
have a
so
good one.
good night.
I'll be
Thank
getting
you.
the signed order and everything. I'll get out to you within the next 3 weeks sooner than.
Yeah, but, yeah, it's a process, don't worry, thank you.
Alright,
Okay.
Thank
have a
you.
good night.
That's pretty good.
As we're moving into the next session, continued hearings, before I forget, I would like to commend Commissioner Mike Seeke for his role in leading the car show component of the Leominster Summer Stroll this
I'm glad
past
that's behind me.
Saturday, June 10th,
Yeah.
2023. It was a very nice car show. I enjoyed it with my wife, so I'd like to commend Mike for other involvement in our community. Thank you, sir.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, our next item is continued hearings. For this, we're not gonna take any action tonight, but I think we're gonna open it so we can discuss it briefly. Is that fair enough? Sure. Thank you. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Leominster Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on a notice of intent for tree removal, construction of a chicken coop, says coop, chicken coop, and associated machine work. Address is 445 North Street, map and parcel 289-1, DEP file number 199-1173.
So, right, as most of you or all of you will recall, the last time we had discussed this, or the last site visit that we had, just prior to that, it was discovered that a good portion of the work that Phil, the homeowner, had contracted be done actually took place on an abutting parcel belonging to a Mr. Alan Quattrale, who didn't live in the area, it was an undeveloped lot. So we put a pause on anything related to this NOI until we were able to investigate that, get in touch with Mr. Quattrale, and see if he would be interested in allowing that alteration be permitted on his property, if he wanted to sell the parcels to Mr. Samos or whatever other outcome we might get to. I have since gotten in touch with Mr. Quattrale and put him in contact with Phil Samos, the property owner, 445 North Street. And I will just read you the most recent email from Mr. Quattrale that I received yesterday morning. So Mr. Quattrale's message reads, all to sum up a bit, whatever was placed on my property has to be removed. What impact he created as to your concerns needs to be addressed and not impact any future development value of my property. I still need to know zoning, boundary limitations from the coop, if any, from the building, Board of Health departments. Who gives permission to install a coop with chickens in Leominster? He asked as a question. Again, I really have no idea about chicken coops. How does my land get protected from the chickens? I'm planning to visit the site in July. I did offer the land for sale or even partial with all costs at his expense as the parcels are on one deed. If possible, I would like to have pictures that can be attached to this email in its current state, as I cannot get there until July. Thank you. So basically, Mr. Quattrale would not like to permit any activity on his parcel, so I haven't spoken with Phil since that email. I last spoke to him last week when him and Mr. Quattrale were still in discussions about possible outcomes. So I'm going to get back to Phil and ask him to have a new proposal ready for us reflecting Mr. Quattrale's wishes and our request that the chicken coop be at a minimum of 50 feet from the stream and or wetlands. However, we ended up with that.
How we ended up with that,
I
which
think it
we're
was-
coming to discuss also later from those minutes, but that the commission said they would consider if it was at least 50 feet from the stream bed, and one commissioner said they would consider it, and potentially consider if it was 50 feet from the wetland boundary.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where it stands right now. Mr. Samos, as I said, he contracted a good amount of, brush clearing. Part of his fire pit / patio area is on Mr. Quattrelli's property. He has a raised bed that is now on Mr. Quattrelli's property.
Where
So-
does this Mr. Cortrelli live?
I believe he lives now in somewhere nearby. I can't remember exactly which town, but somewhere around. I think he had lived in Fitchburg before. I don't know if he currently lives there, but he's from the area. But as he said, he can't make it out there until July, so I'm not sure where he's at right now.
Some of the work that was on his property was part of this notice of intent.
Yeah, so mainly the machine work and the brush clearing.
Done on the other property.
A great deal of it was done on the other property, yeah. So
That's
I would,
not a great sign,
yeah. So I would, so
I say.
So to move forward with this, we'll have to wait and see what Phil presents to us in the new NOI, or in the modified NOI. It'll still be the same file number, but I would recommend, as far as Mr. Quattrelli's property goes, that he remove any
Anything.
yeah, any what's the word? Any alteration, basically.
Restore.
And
the
as
original
far
condition.
and as far as the lawn goes for restoration, I would just suggest that I'll just ask him to pull back and allow it to naturally reseed, revegetate itself. But we can get there later on.
Go ahead.
Mike, did you say that the chicken coop has been moved?
No, this was another one that was up on
Different
Wachusett
yeah.
Street.
That was separate.
It's totally
As I remember, Nick, I think some of the vegetation that was cleaned up, I think it was pretty ratty. It was, broken.
It's
But it was the other guy's ratty vegetation.
Yeah, that's the point.
It was, but I think in the end, which is probably definitely on his property, that it started to get piled up from the machinery that
Yeah.
left a lot of stuff.
Didn't the DOT do some of that stuff too, or not?
I think the line of debris that Bob is talking about was done by Savosa's contractors. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I'll restate what my recommendation would be. I would ask him to remove that material and then just allow. I wouldn't push a wetland restoration project per se on that. I think it could revegetate pretty
But then
naturally.
they have to work that out, that's a civil
But
neighborly dispute that they have to work out amongst themselves.
but as far
Actually, this owner just needs to get his things off the other property, because the other property owners asked for it.
And that's what, we should.
But we don't
kinda-
enforce that.
Yeah, we should,
we just can't permit it.
yeah, right,
So that's the
And allowing this notice of intent to pass through would be permitting it as
Right.
written. And so clearly, we're not gonna do that.
right. So that's why he has to come back before we
Yes.
make a final
Well, they
call.
have talked, you've passed the information
Yeah,
on.
they have spoken, yeah. And that email he sent to me, he also included Phil in that as well, so he got that email.
Clearly, he's on record.
So, question for you, our two commissioners who are not here, will they have to watch this part of this meeting to vote on this next time?
Yeah. They should. We haven't really discussed anything new, but just for consistency's sake, yeah, they should.
Please inform them that, and that it's at approximately 6:45 or so.
About
Yeah, part
51 minutes or so in. Yeah.
Something like that, yeah, thank you. So I guess this is a good time to just continue on. So I'll take a motion to continue this hearing until the next meeting or whenever Nick wants it on the agenda.
I would definitely ask for that.
Thank you. Bob has made the motion, Commissioner Seacard, second.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Ridley.
All right, I'll take the rest of the commission's vote by roll call. Jim Chambers.
Yay.
Mike Siki.
Aye.
And Richard Gullick.
Yes.
All right, 5-0 is continued until such time that Mr. Samos can present a modified NOI.
That hearing is now closed. Okay, so we will move on. Are you folks here for anything in particular, or?
Hotel?
Yes.
Thought so.
Okay, no way.
Well, yeah, I remember the last time you were here.
I like moving agendas to get people, not make you wait.
That would be great.
If you'd like to wait, we'd be glad to go on. So we're gonna change our order of agenda, and I'm gonna jump down to new business number 6, part B, goat rental for Boutel Meadow. Would you care to tell us, Nick, what that's about?
Yeah, so Mike had previously mentioned, I think at the last meeting, Mike Siki, our commissioner here,
Just clarify.
had mentioned.
Car show Mike.
What?
Car show Mike.
I thought you said sideshow Mike.
That
He had mentioned that there's a goat rental business local to here. I think they're based out of Lunenburg. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he had put me in touch with the owner, Tammy Hebert, who I got in touch with last week, and we ended up meeting yesterday afternoon out at the Boutel Meadow to discuss possible business that we could have together. Basically, her goat rentals encompass kind of 2 general areas. One is goat hikes, so they have like hikes through the woods that they try, I think, on their property, on some other properties like around the area. They've worked with other conservation commissions before, where people go on hikes with goats. And the other part of her business is renting out goats as like a mow team, basically, to chew down invasives, but just kind of like a lot of overgrown vines, some native vegetation that can get to an invasive like status with how vigorously it grows. So I was interested in that, securing that possibly for the Boutel Meadow. As we had discussed previously, there's kind of a general interest in maintaining that, managing it as a pollinator meadow. But right now there's a good amount of forbs and herbaceous growth throughout there, but there's also a lot of vines that are taking hold, like invasive bittersweet. There's a lot of poison ivy and some tree saplings that are starting to take root in there. And all of that would be relevant to the goats as a food source. So again, I got in touch with her, but I discovered upon our meeting that the areas that they typically rent the goats out to, it would be like an area of like 1 to 2 acres for them to effectively like eat down all the vegetation. In her words, she said goats kind of tend to get bored in a meadow, like in a big open space, and they'll sort of spread out and not effectively chew it all down. The meadow on the Boutel property is like 15 to 20 acres, so it's pretty big, so it's beyond her scope. So I told her, there could be a possible room for maybe renting or having the goats eat out like a section of the meadow, like sectioning off like a smaller portion of it, or more likely, honestly, that I think we should pursue some other methods to clear out some of those some of the vines and the woody material that I had mentioned to improve the meadow.
Nick?
Yeah.
I'll come back to you, Jim. Any input from the Leominster Trail stewards?
No, it was
Did you
more.
reach them?
I have not reached out to them. It was more of a touch base interview or meeting with her to kind of get a better idea of what they offer, what possible costs might be, if it's even possible, which it turns out it's kind of
And
not.
it's not, it's no reason to have gone yet, but will you consult with them in terms of moving forward, looking at a new management
Yes.
plan?
Yeah, here was, if I could, Mike.
Jim was next, give me 1 second.
He is.
Companies like this set up low voltage electric fences, wiring to close in, so they can make a smaller area and make the goats focus
Exactly.
on that spot.
So that was one of the reasons that I had kind of entertained, like maybe we'll get back to you about doing a section of the meadow. But yeah, like it might be an interesting idea to do that and see, but I don't wanna be just, it's money, so I don't wanna be just like spending our money just to
It's
spend
10
it.
to 15 times out of the scope.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
Commissioner?
You know, my thought on it, and obviously I'm gonna butter up there, is that the mowing is noisy and pretty intrusive. I mean, there were some of the abutters that came to me and saw some, you know, a group of rabbits that had been hit by the mower and things like that we just wanna avoid if all possible. And there was so much interest in goat hikes, I thought it could kind of be negotiated to be, let's do a test where we offer goat hikes up through there, house the goats there for a couple of weeks, and the owners make some money out of the goat, because the goat hikes are like $35, and they're fun, I went on one, they're fun. Let them hike through, because they'll be munching on the invasives down the path, and see if that kind of takes hold as, gee, they'll come 2 or 3 times a year and have some of the visitors up there go on goat hikes, they make their money in that, and then leave the goats there for a couple of weeks and help us out with the meadow. So I just thought there might be some sort of a barter arrangement, maybe there isn't, but that was my thought, because I thought it was gonna be too expensive to have them come in and manage the meadow.
Just size-wise, I think we need a different management
Buffalo.
system. So,
Do they like bonsai?
Yeah, oh, they like bonsai, they want really.
okay, so go ahead.
So Tammy had mentioned, she's not aware of any businesses that do this, but, you know, sheep are a little bit more effective at mowing down large areas like
They'll take it
those.
right to the ground though.
Exactly, yeah, so, but that's a possibility, but again, she wasn't aware of any businesses that rent out sheep per se. I think goat rentals even, are just kind of a niche business, area, so.
Yeah.
I was gonna look into that as a possibility, but I do think we should take, a look with the Leominster Trail Stewards and other collaborators.
Talk to Mike, talk to the other abutters, and come back to us with a plan.
Yes, yeah.
For how that'll get managed.
But we should, yeah, I do think it's worth our attention to figure out some way to kind of clear out what's there and to be able to reseed it with more beneficial native flowers and pollinator plants, so.
It's getting this whole season ahead of us, so.
Yeah.
Let's come up with a plan.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that right now?
Any other thoughts on that right
From the commissioners, Mike, just from the commissioners.
Oh, I'm sorry, no,
Haven't gotten to that point of it. Do you folks care to say anything about this?
My concern.
Please give your name and,
Karen Flynn, 178 Hill Street.
thank you.
Knowing there's still more work to be done, my concern was what's gonna protect these goats from the coyotes out there at night.
the electric fence.
I didn't know there'd be fences, but.
She had mentioned too, that they leave the goats out overnight at all places all over the place, like this is part of their business, and apparently the goats are pretty well suited to defend themselves against coyotes and such, so, which I was kind of surprised to hear, but.
Sometimes they'll throw a llama in there too. Llamas are very effective.
Especially the rams.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Steve Flynn, 178. There was conversation about this in the past, and there was some concern about liabilities with the electrified fences, so just something to keep in the back of your mind.
Definitely,
Yeah, that's
We-
right.
we'll likely move away from this kind
Yeah.
of generally as a strategy, but
If I may
Very
ask,
good
to
point.
put you on the spot, are you opposed to the concept of goats going up there, or just simply
It's-
cautious about it?
Cautious, and there was, many years back, you know, you get the problems with the odors. You get the noise, they wake up early, they can make a racket.
You have goats right next to you at Dave's house.
Yeah, they're far,
They're
but
far enough on the other
Yeah.
side.
there's been some other things up there as well, so.
Anything else you want to
Just
add?
being honest with you.
Well, I'm just wondering, concerned about the fence hurting people, or?
I just know it's come up in this forum in the past, and there
Oh,
was concern about the electrified fence, and they,
There's no motion to move forward with
Yeah.
goats at the moment, so,
I think
Doesn't
it's a
seem too
good
likely.
goat point.
very good. Okay, we all set?
while I have you here, at the risk of getting ahead of myself just to take the temperature a little bit, how would you feel, depending on the season and the conditions and the controls, how would you feel about the idea of having a controlled burn up at the meadow?
I,
The trail, if I may jump in on that?
Yeah.
Before you go, the trail stewards declined to do so because of the amount of poison ivy in the field. And the creation
Well,
of-
that's a good, that's a
it's
good point.
it's in the grass, it's,
So they don't, you're not going, whatever.
That is a good point.
That way.
I hadn't
I
thought
mean,
about that.
I'm all about it as a fire risk safety,
Yeah.
but I have, the other concerns of poison ivy.
It's not good to burn poison ivy.
No,
No.
That is a good point.
I've had the effects of it and it's not pretty.
They were,
Do you have any idea what the average consumption rate is, how long it would take them to eat a clear acre?
I really have I don't know.
it sounded like they'd go for a couple weeks or something, 2-3 weeks and clear 1 to 2
Yeah,
acres.
well, I mean, it's not like we're putting a farm out there, they're just coming for a visit. And then they'll-
Yeah, But they'd be
No, we're
there
talking about the burn.
all,
Well, controlled burning,
No, I'm talking about the goats.
Yeah.
Mhm.
okay.
better than controlled burning.
So
I don't like burning.
we're gonna call an ending to the goat discussion, the goat rental discussion. Thank you for joining us
Thank
again.
you.
Good to see you all again.
Good night, guys.
Thank you all. So we're moving back up to part E under the regular meeting of our agenda. Extension, number 2, extension permits. Hillary Road 7A lot. Nick, tell us about this.
Yeah, so a lot of you might recall from our site visits concerning the Harwood Terrace property, there is the one vacant lot on Hillary Road, which is lot 7A that's referenced here. They have an existing order to build a house and associated septic system out there. That is gonna be coming up to expire in April, so they had requested this extension because they've been working on, and again, as you might recall from previous discussions on Harwood Terrace, the owners of the property had come and they were one of the abutters that spoke, and they had mentioned, the troubles that they'd had with
Okay.
coming through and having deals fall through and having various builders come and go. So they are still looking to develop the lot and build the house, which they've been permitted. But again, like I said, that's due to expire in April, so they're trying to get out ahead of that before that expires.
And there's a septic system in there, or they're gonna
Yeah.
connect to the sewer?
There's there's a septic system
Oh, really?
proposed, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that was sewer.
Wow. And that'd be saturated. I mean, how would you get a type of vibe in there?
Are you asking,
Yeah, it'd be taller than the next house.
are you asking for us to authorize that now?
So that we could hold a vote to extend it or not extend it, or if you would like to see certain things, like I would personally recommend that the wetland line be reflagged out there because the original order was from a few years ago and there's still some flagging out there, but a lot of it has fallen or blown away. So that's the one,
The order was approved, correct?
yes.
So what difference would it make if the wetland boundary changed if it was already approved? The question, you were asking to do that before we authorize this extension?
Yes, yeah, to reflect, just to be sure that that line hasn't changed too much, because it has been several years, wetland delineation is typically held to be good for about 3 years or so.
This one was done when?
I think it was 2019 was when the original order was passed or approved. And especially given the location and all the concerns of drainage and flooding that we've had from the neighbors, I think it would just be pertinent to double check that line and make sure that that's well defined to where that is before any construction could take place.
Can some of the other commissioners comment on that? I at first hesitate to request another one done simply because of these delays. I'm not saying I won't, but at least hesitate at first. Any other thoughts from you folks regarding that? Whether to ask whether to approve it or not, and whether to ask for a redelineation of the wetland bound. Is it something we could do ourselves, looking at it?
think it's maybe after Thursday.
Yeah.
I'm really in doubt of the septic. I'd like to see if there would be possibly put, that's not our business, but I really don't think a septic would even be practical, that anybody would build one.
That's up to them and
Yeah.
not our purview per se, right? If it gets approved under Title V, then all's good.
Yeah.
Jim?
Well, that's what I was gonna ask about the septic system. If it's close to the wetlands, if the wetlands come out, then you can't locate it close to the wetlands.
That would be one reason to have the delineation done.
But isn't that coming under Title V and do DEP need to review that or no? That falls under us.
Well, I think it's both, because I think you're trying to, thinking about constructing a Title V mound on a,
A very small lot,
Well, it's down, they're downhill of the wetland.
and a very small lot, I mean,
So I do have a plan actually. So this is Hillary Road, this is our lot 7A here.
Yeah.
This is the Harwood Terrace parcel, upslope, and the intermittent stream that flows through the property. So this is the proposed footprint of the house. This is the septic system here.
where's the well?
They're not on city water.
Are they on city water there?
It could be, goes right by.
Proposed water service.
Okay, so it's a service, so you don't need to worry about that, okay.
That'll be coming off this line.
Yep.
Going up there. And 1,500 gallon septic tank.
And what's the elevation?
So currently it's at about like 140, 138 there, and then they would raise it up to like 142. So they're gonna raise it up a couple of feet.
What's the groundwater level?
That'll never happen.
What's the groundwater level?
That's
I
not
do
our
know
problem.
that.
That place
Not our
is
problem, but that's so soaked, that is never.
It's just so.
That'll make
I'm
sense.
not personally, I'm not concerned with impacting that wetland, cause I consider that wetland to be the bottom of the hill and it's just the drainage ditch.
They're gonna perk, how are they gonna get it to perk?
Yeah, so, well, that's, again, something they have to
It's
worry
not
out.
our issue.
Right.
But, if they can't get it to perk, they can't build, therefore they don't impact the wetland,
So they're
therefore.
proposing,
Yeah.
retaining walls here.
That's, somebody else.
I think we have other things we can spend our money on.
Do you think they should,
Delineation, especially when you can do it now.
Well, we'll see after,
after Thursday, right?
Yeah, Friday, we want it delineated.
So Nick, the feeling I'm getting, is that kind of, is, you don't necessarily wanna make them redo that. How about you just walk it and get a feel for it?
Okay.
And then if you really think, oh, it's really changed, we'll go,
Suggest it.
then come
We
back
don't
and
have to do
suggest.
it, they should have to do it as
Oh,
part of
they
it.
would have to do it,
Yeah.
but at least let's take a look ourselves, since we have a full-time professional agent.
if it's found to be that drastic.
And you think it's that different, then by golly, yeah, absolutely come in and ask us to, but otherwise,
Sure.
let's not ask. Fair enough?
So we'll, we don't need to continue this because it's not necessarily a hearing,
Yes.
but I'm getting the sense we'll wait till the next meeting, I'll get in touch with them, and in the meantime, I'll go out and flag it. Assuming it's the same, we just come back and vote on it, if it's not, I'll let you guys know and we'll work
And
it out.
whether to have that as part of the vote, yes, Mike?
Yes.
But we're asked to issue an extension, which I think we should.
So but it doesn't expire until April?
Yeah.
So we do have some time, it's not,
Okay.
we're not,
But we,
Next spring.
Our question here, it's not so much, we'll vote on the extension one way or the other, I have a feeling that it's not opposed. But the question is whether to add in a contingency of doing a new delineation before we do that. And that's what we're asking Nick to step in
Well,
and
I think
save them money,
yeah, okay.
potentially. And if he comes back and says, oh, it's really different, guys, we really gotta look at this, then we'll ask the owner to do so.
Yep.
Okay,
I'm comfortable with that.
thank you, excellent.
Can I ask
Nick, we'll
a
look
general
at it.
question on that?
Yep.
We're looking at properties and nature does its thing.
Yep.
And sites were approved 20, 30 years ago for something, and now nature's done its thing. Just because somebody's got order conditions, they're done, they're ready to go in that property?
So orders of conditions, they're only good for 3 years. So they would need to, if it's been close to 3 years, they need to come back for an extension. Anyway, so there's no,
But when they come back for the extension, do they have to present whether or not there's any change in conditions, or do they just say, oh, my thing expired, I'd like another 3 years to.
Well, it's up to us to see if there's
Yeah,
any changes.
gloves there.
Yeah.
If
So-
they've already issued an order, then we look at that order and it's up to the commission to look and see if there's been, significant changes, and then, you take it from there.
So that's what I understand from my communications with some people in Mass DEP and some other places. It's not out of the ordinary, and it's pretty standard for commissions to ask for a reflagging or something like that if a lot of time has passed, especially over multiple, as we've seen happen sometimes. A property gets an order and then it's extended several times over the years, and it could be like 10, 15 years later.
Right.
Especially in a situation like that where it's been so long that it's likely that there is a change, even if it is slight. So
Thank you.
There's a updated wetlands flag, September 4th, 2019.
yes, so yeah, that was because they had gotten an order like back in 2009, but they've changed the configuration of the house and somewhat, so that I think they came up for an amendment in 2019, so that's when they had it reflagged. But again, it's been almost 4 years now, so just a little bit of time, but I'm comfortable with, especially since it's, given the nature of the stream, it's not like this big expansive wetland, it's a pretty defined channel, so.
And I don't personally think they affect it, it affects them.
Yeah.
It's more the reverse, it's at the bottom of the whole Kmart overlook from that hill.
Yep.
And the water's just there, they're not gonna hurt that value of that wetland, they just need to get the water moved.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our next item, okay. Under communications, E3 here on the agenda, restarting investigation with Department of Public Works on the Newsnack Brook E. coli bacteria.
Yeah.
Tell us about
Very
restarting this
interesting.
investigation.
So Sean Como and the DPW had been working with my predecessor Angela Shabuski on determining the source of some of these E. coli spikes that they keep getting in Manusnack Brook. As some of you might recall, I think this was one of the earlier items that this commission discussed when I first came onto the position about a year ago. Chuck had been asking about the Nashua River watershed, does water testing along different streams and various areas of the streams. One of their testing sites is at the Whitney Carriage South parking lot, which is right up against the Manusnack Brook. And that site consistently gets really high E. coli numbers, higher than like any other of their testing sites anywhere near here.
I tested that site for 5 years.
Yeah, so you know personally, it's very high. And that, when was that? Do you?
2007, 2008.
So
It goes
yeah.
back.
So it's been ongoing for a while, and in my discussions with Sean, he described to me that there seems to be some sort of pattern where it kind of goes down to normal levels, like baseline levels in the winter months, and then every summer it respikes again with some variation throughout that. It will go up and down. And he himself, in his investigation of this, had tested along some other areas of the brook in that vicinity to try and pinpoint where it is. So he believes that it's somewhere, the source of it is probably somewhere between the Water Street Bridge at Whitney Carriage, where that testing is taking place, and there is an old, I don't know the name of it, but some sort of industrial building that actually is built over top the Manusnack Brook, if you're familiar with the area that I'm talking about. It's the section of brook that's between Water Street and Spruce Street, / like Mechanic Street, like in that area. It's somewhere in there, and he has a strong suspicion that it could be associated with that building that actually goes up over top of it, because he's tested above there and it seems to be lower. And he's tested below at the parking lot, and that's where it always spikes. So that kind of, the investigation kind of died off after Angela left because they were working together on it. And with her being gone, he's busy with a bunch of other stuff. It kind of just fell by the wayside. But Chuck had asked me about it a few weeks ago, so I brought it back up with him. And he's very interested in getting to the bottom of it. Sean is in the DPW. So I told him I'm going to be working with him to try and get in touch with the owner of that building to get DPW access so they can get inside and just in that area of the brook that goes underneath the building to do some additional testing, and then hopefully we can maybe pinpoint a source.
So is it below the dam or above the dam?
Above, it seems to be above the dam,
Above the dam.
because they're testing from the parking lot, which is
Okay.
above the dam.
Yep. Okay.
And so it's somewhere upstream of there, and that building is just right upstream of there. And he's tested, I think, kind of in near Monument Square, that portion with the collapsed retaining wall over there, and it doesn't seem to be spiking
Okay.
over there. So it's somewhere down from there, somewhere up from the parking lot.
Do you know what the numbers were?
Not offhand, but I have them in the email that
was
Chuck
curious.
sent. Yeah.
I would be interested in looking at the data that you guys have come up with. I've done several studies trying to identify pollutant sources, either in large industrial complexes or out in the environment and so on. I spend
Isn't
my
dye
day,
typically-
I spend my day interpreting data such as E. coli data.
Yeah.
Dye's
So,
all right.
okay.
And I'd be willing to give you 2 cents on
I'll include
that.
you.
Any
in
other
that.
thoughts, suggestions for Nick?
No, I was just asking about dyeing.
They have done. I heard that they have done some
Yes.
dye tests,
Yeah.
but they haven't been able to find anything.
They've done
Yeah.
several dye tests, several times
Huh.
during several different years.
Yeah, but nothing conclusive
No.
in terms of this. So I just, for curiosities, I did pull up the last E. coli report card that Chuck had sent me from NRWA. They had tested on April 15th of this year and in the Whitney Carriage parking lot, and it tested at 83, which is in like the excellent range. And the next time they tested on May 20th, they got a reading of 613.1.
613.
And they've seen it as high as like 14, like 1600
Yeah.
before.
Are they giving total coliform data also?
Are they getting one?
Total coliform bacteria? I would, no, I don't.
I do not know.
I'd be
that would
interested to see what else they're doing.
What's the nutrient source?
This over here, right?
Well, he's feeding something causing that E. coli to grow.
Steve,
Right. So that's what, yeah, we're trying.
It could be leaking sewer lines,
Yeah.
so on.
Remember where Rockdale's was?
Okay, guys.
Alright.
Okay, ready for the next?
So yep, that's where that stands.
Okay, good to hear, thank you for that. Number 4, enforcement at 546 Prospect Street, a violation notice, Nick?
Alright, so I received a phone call from an anonymous tip, just someone driving by, that reported some landscaping vehicles there. It appeared that there was some sort of work, and they were familiar with this property, that there were several ponds in the back with a small stream running by them. And they called me concerned about that because they saw a landscaping company. It looked like, to them, in their words, it looked like they were hiding some possible work that could be going on down there. So I took a drive down, and at that time I did find a landscaping company finishing up some work out there. So there was a lot of vegetation and brush and small trees and shrubs along the edges of all those ponds, with some vegetation growing in between them. And basically they had stripped all that off. They stumped all of the smaller trees around the ponds, but they left some of the larger diameter trees, like kind of anything bigger than this, they left. And they left the roots in place for the specific purpose of, keeping the bank stable. But that said, they did have extensive machine work all around the ponds, and they stripped everything with the goal of making all that lawn area. and I actually knew the property owner because we had gotten a certificate of compliance, an old certificate of compliance closed out for this property in the last few months. So I had spoken with the owner, Mark Latino is his name. So I was already familiar with him. I showed up, told the landscapers what was wrong about what they're doing. I explained to Mark what the procedure should have been. And he seems, very apologetic. And I told him, basically the work was done by the time that I had gotten there, and they were planning on reseeding. So I told him to go ahead with the reseeding to just stabilize what was there, because it was all just dirt by the time I got there. And basically his long-term goal, there's 4 ponds back there, and they're all man-made from decades ago, from the previous owner who he knows there, that built the ponds, like back in the 70s, I think. And there used to be a piping system from one pond to another, so the first pond is the highest and the 4th pond is the lowest, and they kind of flow into each other, and then the final pond flows into the stream that runs along there. And all of those have either collapsed or have been grown over with some of the tree roots that have been growing around there. And that's been leading to a lot of flooding in his yard. So instead of draining into each other when the ponds fill up, they just overflow their banks into his yard. So this was the first phase of him trying to fix that issue. And I told him, again, I explained why he shouldn't have done anything before he talked to us, and that if he's gonna be doing anything further with the piping or the engineering around there, that he's gonna have to file a notice of intent with us, which he does plan on doing, but not immediately. But whenever he does get to work on the fixing the piping there, or doing any other machine work or any other clearing around there, he knows to get in touch with me. So I sent him a violation notice, basically explaining that he has to cease any other work before filing a notice of intent. So that's where it stands right now. And just to give a little bit more context on this, when I visited him there, he provided me with an old aerial photograph that he got from the previous owner that showed that area. And there was lawn and grass in the spaces between the ponds, so it's not unprecedented what he was doing necessarily. He was trying to return it to the state it was in previously, which I explained, would be fine and all permittable, but it's just the fact that he did it without talking to us beforehand is the issue. So,
Any questions for Nick?
Yeah, I have one question. Anybody that's a registered, certified, however they call it, licensed builder in the state of Massachusetts has an obligation to know what the building codes are. Why isn't a landscape company required to, why can they just saying, gee, we didn't know? They all know what the Wetland Protection Act. I think there's gotta be something that we could do to.
Talk to the legislature about that.
But they're the ones that are doing the work.
Right.
Well, we've talked before, if I can jump on this, that it would behoove our own mission to advertise this Wetlands Protection Act greater to our constituents, to the citizens. And in terms of some of that outreach, one of them could be to all the landscaping companies, at least in the area. We'll get some of them, won't get everybody, we can get info to some. We could put stuff in the newspapers. And just get a bigger exposure, letting people know.
I guess there's no
Kind of like
violation.
before you dig, call, here, before you, get near the water, call us, kind of deal.
Could we give that type of information to the building department and then hand it off to whoever's getting the building permit?
that's an idea. I know the building department is pretty good at just directly advising people when they are working in an area that they know it has wetlands. They always send people over to me. That's how I get a lot of the people I talk to, is through building. But on that note, just before we move on with this, on the outreach note, you had brought in one of the postcards that
Yes.
you got from the health department on recycling. I have gotten in touch with the company that printed those and prepared those for it. It's Tiger Press. And I've had one email back and forth with them, but other things have come up in the last week that it kind of has fallen by the wayside, but that is a possibility that I'm interested in pursuing, so.
Yeah, if you would come back to us at some point with a plan for different types of outreach, what the overall outreach plan would be with a kind of like a mission statement of what your goals would be, and then how you're gonna do it, and we can give you some input. And then we can get the word out there more, so we hear less often, oh, I didn't know, because frankly, we're not supposed to care if they don't know, if we care, wrong wording.
Yeah.
But we need
It's
to,
happening more and more.
And I wonder if there's some sort of educational hour that we could do for the landscapers. I mean, there's no way that we can there's no way we can endorse landscapers or
no,
unendorse them. And there's no way that we can license them in any way. But if we were to have an educational, maybe a Zoom meeting or something, to say, you know, you gotta know what the rules are.
even just flyers would help.
Yeah, flyers would help,
Yeah.
but then you just can't be assured that they're gonna read them, I mean,
Fair
there's gotta be some sort of, there's no sort of violation that we could hand to a repeat offender that is a landscaper for knowingly working in the wetlands when they know that they don't have an order of conditions. There's nothing, right, we could do,
We can deny the notice of intents,
if
that's,
they come to us, but like in this case, it wouldn't help.
right, then you have to go after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move along, we're good there?
I'm good.
Okay, next item, it would be emergency certifications, there are none. Under new business, the next conservation hike, led by our agent Nick, is at Prospect Park, correct?
Oh, yep, Prospect Park,
Park,
on Prospect Street.
on Prospect Street, that's Saturday, is that right? It's a Saturday?
It is a
July 8th?
Saturday, yep.
Saturday, July 8th at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
to noon.
Yep.
I believe.
That is
Do me
right.
a favor in future agendas, put the time on here, the full detail,
Yes,
if you would, 'cause
that would be helpful.
but tell us quickly about it. I did bring one of your really nice flyers you had. I picked one up at the senior center and I think it's at home.
Oh, good.
Tell it briefly about this hike.
Yeah, so that flyer that Rich had mentioned, that's on the Leominster Conservation Commission Facebook page, for anyone watching, give us a follow. But yeah, so it's gonna be wetland plant focused, so I'll be pointing out some common wetland plants that are growing along Prospect Park, as well as some other plants that you can find around there, and just discussing some identification features and how they're used in wetland delineation as, you know, a piece of this outreach that we were just talking about to spread some awareness, and talking about some of the ecological roles that those plants play in our ecosystem here, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you are also going to some training in the near future on wetland delineation, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, so that'll be on Thursday. The Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions is holding an event detailing they came out with a revised version of the bordering vegetated wetland delineation handbook. So that's gonna be kind of the theme of the events, and we're gonna be talking about delineation through vegetation, through hydric soils, and various things like that.
Where is that?
That's in, it's at the Mass Wildlife Headquarters in Westboro.
Westboro.
So I'll be there all day Thursday.
Excellent, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to our next item, under number 8, budget, there's something mentioned about the Wetlands Protection Fund.
Yeah, so I knew that we had this. This is where the filing fee, the city portion of filing fees gets deposited into this protection fund, which we are then allowed to dispense money from for certain items that are related to enforcing the Wetland Protection Act. We have getting close to 100K in there. So we, yeah,
I'm sorry to laugh, but I
so
thought you were gonna say $1,000.
No, we have a lot.
$1,000.
It hasn't been, as far as I can tell, it hasn't really been used recently in the last few years, so there's only been money added to it. So I'm bringing this up specifically in regards to the Harwood Terrace project, because the city had voiced support for using city funds to pay for a third-party review of the mitigation plans they have up there. On that note, it's not on the agenda, but it's related to this discussion because that's why I'm talking about the fund is for funding that review. Josh Brennicky, the property owner of Harwood Terrace, I spoke to him today on the phone, and he mentioned that Hannigan Engineering did provide him with a mitigation plan, just a rough site plan for a level spreader that I had mentioned before. It's basically like a big horseshoe of crushed stone at the base of one of those storm pipes. So I just got that today. It's about 2 weeks old, was when Josh got it, and just no one ever sent it to me, so I'll be distributing that to everyone via the drive, so you can take a look at that. But I still think it's worth it to pursue a third-party review of this and just spend some money on it, for various reasons, being, us making sure that we're adhering to the ordinance.
Tell you what, you don't need to go into that
Sure,
kind of
yeah,
detail at this point, because we're not
I get
here to
bogged down.
discuss that.
Yeah, yep.
So we're gonna move it along.
So, but we do, just so we're all aware, we do have that money available to us for certain things relating to enforcement of.
We've talked in the past about wanting to hire our own wetland delineator to do something like this, so we could potentially use that money for that, I don't know if we have any control over that money, get right to you. But also, I'd like to see some use for some of the outreach. Commissioner?
Is that money dated? Is it permanent in the fund, or does it go back to the general account?
I think it's been building over a few years, so as far as I know, it stays in there for us to use.
Okay, that's an interesting,
I'll be invested, take that with a grain of salt, that's the appearance of it to me, so that's what I'm going off of, but I'll find out if there's any kind of a limit on that in terms of time.
Maybe a field trip to the Galapagos for the commissioners.
Yeah, outreach might be a little far afield for it, but for a number of specific things, but I could forward.
you said to help enforce the act. I would
Right.
consider informing people of the act part of enforcing it.
Sure, I'll send you
Find out if that's possible.
I'll send you the memo I got from the comptrollers on how to use it,
Okay.
so.
Oh, okay, that'd be nice.
Yes.
And do your best to keep other people's hands off.
It's ours.
General city fund.
Yeah.
Can we use it as a vehicle, like to get a handbook, like you're gonna be probably getting one, to buy literature? for us?
So that would come from our general fund,
General fund.
because we do have money set aside for that for books. So Chuck had been asking me about that, you're talking about the.
Back handbook, well, the update.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Which you'll get Thursday. Sounds like there's a new book coming out.
Well, that's a BVW handbook, but then there's a separate, just handbook for commissions, functioning, I can't remember the name of it.
And we do
exactly,
get some of those books through the MACC with our memberships. Because the
Yes,
city pays for all of our memberships. And your first year, you'll get a copy of that for a year. And then once you get through the 6 or 8 classes, I think it is, to get certified, if you do that, then they give you another year.
I'll send you all an email on that handbook if you're interested in getting
Great
it.
to hear. There's 2 meeting minutes on the agenda to discuss. The second one is May 23rd. I was not able to access that, so we're not gonna discuss that one tonight. Something changed in the accessing online. The May 9th, I have several comments. Did anybody else have comments on May 9th?
No.
Okay. So I don't wanna vote on these tonight, cause I'm gonna have enough changes that Nick's gotta go through it.
Okay.
But I would, just to make sure we clarify this is one talking about the 445 North Street.
Mhm,
So this is from May 9th,
mhm.
and the owners were here. The issue of the chicken coop was raised. It mentioned that Stephanie Quinlan had mentioned Centers for Disease Control recommended a minimum of 50 feet for chicken coops located near private potable wells.
Mhm.
This resource is area, it's an intermittent stream. Is that really intermittent, or is it always flowing?
It's not on any USGS maps, and I would imagine that you could go there 4 times in a year and see it not flowing, yeah.
A couple times at least?
Yeah.
Okay, it's always before, anyway, she said that it was, that according to this, she continued that the distance of 50 feet would be a good compromise in her mind. But what Stephanie was referring to was not from the stream bed, it was from the wetlands. Other commissioners said 50 feet from the stream bed might be something they could consider, with no promise on any of it. So this is overly optimistic, and I'd like to, so to speak, for the owner and change that part.
That's fine.
So we would consider if it's over 50 feet. Anybody else have a different recollection on that? Same thing, okay. And the other ones I think we can talk about and go over separately. Okay?
Sure.
That'd be easy enough.
Yeah.
So that moves us right along, folks. Wetland ordinance, we're not gonna do anything tonight discussing on ordinance planning unless you have anything
I got
for the new committee.
Unless Jim, do you have anything?
No, I don't, but I think that, a lot of good information will come out from doing that study on, Hillary and, what do you call it, street above it, Harwood.
In terms of informing a possible ordinance, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we know when Mr. Bonanza was here, he informed us that there was some sort of stormwater management
Yeah, I read
Yeah,
ordinance.
And that was gonna get looked into by then as to what was violated, and we haven't heard anything.
Right.
So that's another one for you to follow up on, if you would. Please report to us at our next meeting on that follow-up also.
If I may.
Mike, please.
So, while we're, just, this wetland ordinance is going to be a long-term decision or discussion. Is there a way that with the city allows its residents to have chickens?
To what?
Chickens. I mean, it's clearly in the ordinance, and there are different numbers of chickens you can have in different zones. I think it would be a wise thing to do to change that ordinance to put in, if you are anywhere, wording around, if you are by a wetlands, make sure that you consider, that isn't an ordinance, it's make sure you are, consider contacting the Conservation Commission to determine if this ordinance is applicable to you. I think an early warning system will stop
That's
future.
more education.
It's,
In effect.
people are out there looking, they see, hey, I can have chickens.
I
End of
think,
story.
yeah.
Yeah, the city says I can, what do you mean, now the city says I can't? I would be frustrated. Nonetheless, we have a due diligence to consider.
But I mean, if it was out in the ordinance that there was some caveat out there that say, not everybody, if you're putting the chickens on the pond, it's probably not a good idea.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea that if wherever there are existing ordinances for the city that mention chickens, I think that would be a very helpful and fine thing to put in. I don't know who would be opposed to putting that wording in because it is just true if you're within 100. I've seen that in other places, like the stormwater ordinance is a little bit more directly tied to us, but it does explicitly state in there, like, if you're working within 100 feet of wetland, you need to get permitting
And
through
you could say
conservation.
the 100 feet and the 200 feet, and this would need approval, a chicken coop would need approval.
Yeah, I like to mirror that language when they mention
Can you
chickens.
direct me to the
Stormwater,
proper chapter of the ordinance?
stormwater?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. And could you direct me to the chicken ordinance?
Chicken ordinance.
Awesome.
Okay, excellent. Any other thoughts on commissioner news? Any ideas from anybody here tonight? Okay, our next meetings are gonna be one on June 27th, 2023. We'll be here at 6 p.m. that Tuesday. Filing deadline is noon on July 9th. The following meeting will be Tuesday, July 11th, 2023. That filing deadline is June 23rd at noon. And I would like to take a motion to adjourn this meeting. Is it anybody?
So may.
Please? Ken Ridlin made the motion to adjourn the meeting. Is the motion seconded?
I'll second it.
Bob Seacard seconded.
Aye.
Yeah, take the rest of Jim, Mike,
Aye.
and Rich.
Aye,
All right.
meeting is adjourned at 7:46 PM.